All right, guys. So last week we talked about what the presidents were withholding. This week I'd like to talk about what we might have possibly have gained from the Roswell crash. Now, these are everything I'm going to share with you is based on my discussions with best-selling author Bill Burns, who wrote the best-selling book Day After Roswell. Now, I have tried to fact check everything that he shared with me, and there's a lot of information that backs up what he's saying from independent research outside of what he said. So I'd like to ask people, don't take my word for it. I'm just reciting what he's told me. Do your own research, but I'm wondering if this might just challenge your reality, if not full on blow your mind. All right. Several things that we had allegedly gotten, and it advanced us from 50 years to 200 years in technology. We would have gotten there eventually, but not nearly as fast if that crash hadn't taken place. Number one, the outfits that these aliens were wearing was made out of something that was material where the atoms were anatomically aligned. These fibers, actual molecules lined up. Basically, it led to the development of Kevlar. Probably the aliens use it to protect themselves in space. We now use it to stop bullets and knives. Another thing, all over the inside of this spacecraft were these fiber optics. Nobody had ever seen it before, and they eventually became very useful to us, and now it's how we get our internet. Another thing that was extracted from one of the bodies of the aliens was a lens, kind of like a contact lens, in the eye, okay? And it wasn't actually his eyeball. It was like a lens on top of it, allegedly. And it was actually repurposed for night vision. Now, I'm not saying that that's how we got night vision, because we already had night vision with tanks. But you see that clunky piece of equipment at the top of the tank? That's World War II. That's where we were before Roswell. After Roswell, our soldiers were wearing these lenses on their heads, and they were able to wear it in the battlefield, not just on top of a tank. All right, let's go to the next slide. See those guys there? They're working on the country's first laser. And this was in Columbia University. They'd been working on it since the 1930s, different assignments for the military. But they had hit a lot of roadblocks until 1954. Okay, now that's significant for a number of reasons. They got their big breakthrough in 1954. That was just a few years after the Roswell crash. And guess who the president who actually put together this special lab working on amplified energy was? It was Dwight Eisenhower. And he came into power in 1953, and many believe he took this laser cutting device that was found on board the ship and gave it to Columbia University to work on. And it was at that point, the year after that, that they got their big breakthrough. This is incredible stuff. It's hard to believe, but then when you research the facts and the players and the timeline of when this stuff took place, it's very intriguing, right? Okay, so now let's talk about the spacecraft. The spacecraft didn't have wires strewn everywhere. The entire ship was said to be one entire circuit board. And they believe that this was the birth of the integrated circuit, or the transistor. Okay, now that's actually a pretty close representation as to what the ship was. They say it was kind of a crescent moon shaped ship. And so the transistor was born. And Harry Truman, when it crashed, he went in there and ordered that this place thing be dissected and taken apart and taken to different parts of the private industry, the private sector, ideally people that had military connections, because they could be trusted to keep things confidential. And so they sent it off, and patents were filed, and the transistor was born. And that might not sound like a big deal, but it is, because if you look at the radio before the Roswell crash, that's what it was on the left. After it, in the 50s, people were walking around with them in their hands, listening to the radio. And my dad tells me that when that happened, he was the coolest kid in town because he had one of those transistor radios. This may not sound like a big deal, but think of it this way. That pocket calculator in the 70s, prior to the Roswell crash, something with that computing power took up that entire room. And so a group at Texas Instruments, they had these transistors, these integrated circuits, and they eventually found their way going to California, to Silicon Valley. And that group eventually, allegedly, gave birth to a little company called Intel. So, your radio, anything with a circuit, the cars you drive, might just have the benefit of alien technology that came to Earth during a lightning storm in the July of 1947. Tell me what you think. If you think this is nonsense, tell me that. And if you think there's something to it, tell me that as well. And if you have any other ideas, I'd love to hear from you.